begin now, and you will see a notification at the top of the screen when it starts. We have today got a dual purpose of the training. Microsoft Forms is one of those tools at your disposal in Office 365. It's pretty much universal across the whole school. It doesn't matter whether you're a member of the reception team, whether you are a business manager or a class teacher, there will be a way that you can use Microsoft Forms. And today's training session will have a look at all those different ways that you can use it and how it can also save you time. It can certainly reduce workloads, and it can automate some of what you do in school, maybe through paper systems, or it may be through other systems, and it doesn't integrate or transfer information quite as well. The other thing that we're going to do today at the end of the session is we will give you an achievement code for having completed this training. That Microsoft achievement code can be redeemed in Microsoft Learn, and that's the education center that replaced the old Microsoft Education Center. That will help to add to your achievement points that you've got in there. If you've not used Learn yet, there's a link in the chat which you can click, and then you can either sign in or sign up. You can sign up with your school Office 365 account, and the code that I'll give you at the end of the training session can then be used to redeem those achievement points and will count towards having undertaken today's training. It's also a great place to get professional development resources and direct colleagues, and that learning that you're undertaking can have impact just within your role, or it might be that it cascades out across the school and helps others. Excuse me just a moment. It will also allow you to undertake different qualifications. So the course that you're coming to today is part of Microsoft Advanced Educator, but those courses are also available in Learn, and you can undertake those if you wish. And coming to the sessions that we put on will help you to work towards those. Anyway, back to today's session, and we are very much focusing on how forms can transform the educational institution you work within. So we'll consider several things. First of all, we'll look at how to use forms to collect data and what sort of form you should use. And there's questionnaire forms and quiz forms. Then we'll look at how to analyze the data once you have it, and also how you get those forms shared with others. And we'll consider a few of the advanced features that are in forms as well. The first thing you need to ask yourself is, do I want to collect data by asking people a series of questions? And questions can lend themselves to maybe engaging with parents and collecting information in. It might also that you want to use those questions in class. So it could be that you are conducting a science inquiry. And what you want to do is survey the size of feet of the children you've got in the class that you're working with. So you could have a Microsoft form, and the pupils could scan a code and then go in and put that data in, and you could have it up on the board as a teacher. Equally, as those parents submit their answers, if you work as business manager or admin team, however it is, reception, front of house of the school, you'll be able to check in Teams and see what the answers were to those questions that you asked the parents. The other side might be that you are using it to support teaching and learning. And one of the other things that you can do with forms is you can set up quizzes, and then those quizzes can either be set just through forms on its own, or you could link with some of the other aspects we've considered in previous training sessions, and you could embed them in Teams, or you could pop them into a Sway. And then those questions and those quizzes will help either formative assessment or summative assessment. But the beauty of them is that once you've made them, you can then use them over again, but they're also self-marking, because in a quiz you can indicate what the correct answers are so that the pupils would get some feedback instantly. So the first stage is whatever you're going to do, questions or quiz, you need to build the form. And then once we've got the form and the submissions come in, we can export that data collected, and then we can share that with other applications, and we can get that data analyzed in other ways. So what we'll do now is we'll jump over and we'll have a look at what that looks like in reality. So I'm just going to share my other screen with you. What we're going to also look at today is how to get into Forms. So Forms, once upon a time, was a desktop app, but that desktop app was removed and it became end of life. So everything we're going to do today is in a web browser. You'll need to have a modern web browser. So Internet Explorer, the old browser, is not supported. I either use the Microsoft Edge browser that's been around for a number of years now, or you could use Google Chrome, or you can use Firefox. Any of those modern browsers will work equally as well. You go to www.office.com and then you sign in with your email address for Office 365 from school and the password. You might enter that typically to get into your Outlook emails each day, but the same thing works online. And you need to work in forms as tabs in a web browser. When you get signed in, you might end up in one or two places. You could either go straight to your Outlook emails, or you're going to end up here, which is the Microsoft 365 homepage. As a little aside, as we go through this afternoon's training, Office 365 is in a process of being phased out, and it's going to be rebranded and re-imaged as Microsoft 365. So there'll be some extra apps and contents and features that go in there, but that will happen over the next few months. So don't be phased, and you can see it's already started by naming this Microsoft 365 at the top. That will, the look and the feel will alter slightly, but the actual content behind it will still be there. If you want to get to Forms, you click the app launcher in the top left-hand corner, and it will either be available in your instant menu, or you may, if it's not there, click on All Apps, and then they're organized alphabetically until you find Forms. If you click on Forms, the initial page it will take you to is slightly different from the final one that you will use, and we'll show you both today. So the initial page will have recently used forms, forms that you've pinned that are of importance, and also forms that you've had shared with you at the same time. If you want to pin a form, you click on the three dots and you can then add it to pinned, or you can remove it from the list if you don't want to see it in this list and actually your list is getting too cluttered with recently used forms. Maybe you've been jumping around quite a few. So what we can see here is there's a whole load of forms that I've used previously, and down here there are different groups. It links to groups and teams where there are forms in existence. So it tells me that there's 25 forms in that particular class team, which we've looked at previously in those other training sessions. You can view them as either preview, thumbnails, or you can change it to a list. Either is absolutely fine. If you want to move and toggle in between, you can search and filter there as additionally. And when you need to start a new quiz or a form, it's from the button at the top. If you don't wish to start a quiz, you can click the arrow on the side and have form. This is almost like an initial stage landing page, and then you would click all forms, and that takes you through to the area where you tend to work on a normal basis. And this is the hub of where forms and all the features for forms exist. So what we have here are the same features that we had on the landing page, where you've got quiz and new form, except of it being tied up in that menu. They're here as separate buttons. For a lot of people, they tell me it makes more sense to see it this way. And you've got the other options. Instead of all those forms appearing in the list like they were back here in the recent list, you can organize them into folders. Those folders are called collections in this instance, and those collections can have different forms added to them. So I've created a collection here called Classroom Quizzes. If you want to create a new collection, you click on the button there, give it a name, and then it will pop up like this. And what you can do is you can rename it, you can copy it or delete it. And then once you've got your forms in there, instead of seeing a blank, there are no forms in this collection, you'll be able to see all the forms that you've added into there. So if you are a teacher, you might want to have one for different subjects. You might have one for different units within a subject. It's up to you how you like to organize it. And if you want to add something in, so it might be my maths and shape, you can click on the side and then you can move it to a group or a collection, and that would be Classroom Quizzes. If you want to not build a form from scratch, there is a new feature that's come about very recently, which is called Quick Import. If you've got something from another source, so if you're a classroom teacher, you might have a paid scheme where you get lots of PDFs out, or you might have something you've used previously that you've created in Word, or you've had in a PDF and you've given it in paper form, and maybe it's a questionnaire that's gone out to teachers, parents, governors. What you can do now is you can upload that form into forms, and it will convert it from a standard document with its best estimations into a live Microsoft form with all the correct question choices. I often get asked at this point as well, is there a library of forms where I can go and pick them up? Sadly, there's not. There are templates available for forms when you build them, and you can find those by searching on the internet for Microsoft form templates. And Microsoft has their own store of templates, but those templates are largely blank, and it will involve you popping in your questions, although by picking up a template, the formatting, layout, and themes are all taken care of. So if we, let's get rid of that one, we don't need that one. If we want to make a form, we can go into the option there for new form. Click new form and you'll come in here. So this new form might be governor's survey. And in that governor's survey, we want to know a bit more about you. So this might be for getting new governors. So this is finding prospective governors that are going to come and join the governing body in school. So we're now going to add a new question. It's really obvious down there. And when you click on it, you'll get a choice of commonly used question types. It's not an exhaustive list. And if you press the arrow pointing down, you'll see all the other types. A little bit later, we'll go and have a look at a form I have already created with different examples of question types in there. But for now, we'll start with one that's commonly used called choice. And it's exactly as it says on the tin. It's a multiple choice question type. And that multiple choice will allow you to tell the governor to tell you something about themselves. So it might be, are you, oh, let's say, so let's change that to, do you have a particular skill set? Because I want to get some members of the governing body with skill sets. If you get a spelling mistake like that, you can always click. It's got the same spelling checker built in. You can at any point have additional media to make the question less text-based and static. And then that, if I go to maybe later, that will involve a box opening on the side. And you can either insert an image or insert a video. If you want to insert an image, it doesn't mean leaving forms. You can stay in forms. And what you will then do is search within here. So we might have school governor and see what we get. The images that you get returned are in the Creative Commons, so therefore they're not going to infringe any copyrights. Maybe we'll take this governor here that looks like they're wandering around the classroom. We'll add it in, and then that will sit next to our question. So down here, it might be that you've got experience of education. It might be that you've got experience of business, and there could be others. So you might want to add another option. So it might be government. And there could be various things there. You can have yes, no's, or maybes in there, but it tends to work best with multiple choices if you've got something tangible to hang it upon. You can, if you wish, add other option in, and then that gives the person a space to add their own. And I might do that because I've only given 3 really specific examples there. When you've got your questions, after building them, you can say that they are either multiple answer or single answer. At the moment, I've got a circular radial box, and that means it is a single answer. I can organize them any way I like, so I can drag them around, I can change, or maybe I want to decide this is going to be in alphabetical order, so it's going to be business, education, government. But I could say, instead of fixing people on one answer, I can allow them to have multiple answers. And if I toggle that on, the radial boxes change to squares, and that now means I can tick 2 or 3. And I could also limit it to only a certain number of choices. So I could have no limit, or equal to, or at most. So I might say equal to 2, because I only want 2 areas that they've got of skill sets to bring into the school. But I additionally want to make sure that this question is answered, so I can toggle across and make this a required answer. So you can't progress to the end of the form unless you've answered all of the required answers. In the 3 little dots on the side, I have some cunning little options there available, and one is to shuffle. So instead of those instead of those answers appearing in the same order, you can shuffle them. So you might want to shuffle on, and if so, each time someone comes to this, they would appear in a different order. That's quite useful when we come to look at classroom quizzes, but as this is going to a prospective governor, I'm going to leave that there. You can have a subtitle underneath. It might be, what skills could you bring? I don't know. I'm going to be pretty direct in this. You might want to be a little more subtle in your real examples. And then it gives a little bit more of a description as to why they're going to answer that question and what you might need to know about them. You can also add branching, and we'll look at branching a little bit later when we come to look at quizzes. Originally, branching was only in a quiz, but now it's been added recently to forms as well. That means you can choose the path that people take through the form. When you're ready, you can add another question, and I might say this is a text question. At the moment, this is a short answer question, so therefore the box at the bottom where it says enter your answer is going to be only for one sentence. And it might be describe. It's going to be a describe your skills. We're still focused on skills. And in there, they're going to give a description of whatever they could bring and expand a little bit on the options they've ticked above. Because that might spill over beyond one sentence, I'm going to make that long answer. That means you can put a paragraph of answers in there. This time, I'm not going to include a picture. I'm still leaving it as required, and the same options appear in the dots. Once I've got a question, I could pick it up and I could move it around, so I could reorder them so they could sit that way, but that doesn't make a lot of sense. So I'm going to grab it and return it to the same direction. So it's not static, it's very much ability to change this. If you've got a question structure that's quite useful and you want to use it over and again, you can duplicate or copy the question, and then that will allow you to adapt it when you get to the next version. If you don't like it, you can just delete the question. You can additionally reorder by moving up and down on the arrows if you don't like the option of picking them up by hovering over them and grabbing the dots that appear at the top of the question. Once you've started to build it, you're going to consider, well, what does that look like? And that's where the preview comes in. When you click the preview button, you can preview what it looks like on a computer, and that's up there at the top. Scroll down, and that looks okay, but I'm going to probably come back and make a few more changes. The other beautiful thing about forms is that it will take care of scaling for mobile devices. So whether that's a phone or a tablet, you can additionally change that. So in here, this is now what it looks like if I'm seeing the same form on a mobile phone, where I may have had to have thought about what on earth was going on. I previously, when I was doing this in paper form, I no longer have to do that because the platform takes care of that for you. I want to come back out of that, so I'm going to press the back button, and I want to make that look slightly differently. So I'm going to theme it. Now you can have themes that are pre-built from Microsoft, and they will quickly change the way something looks and feels, but those themes may not be completely right. So you might want to customize it to your school colors. I'm going to say we've got a blue school here, and then that blue tinge in the background and so forth is all there. You can make it a little bit fun with some of those classroom things. What you can do here is you can also upload your own image, and you can choose your own colors if you wish. So you could put in your own hex colors. Those take a little bit of getting used to. And I can never remember them all off the top of my head, but you can got a 4-digit code that will give you the hex colors there, and then that will allow you to customize this further still with your own background image and your own color. So if you wanted a different type of color to the blue that was more of your school color, you can amend all of that through. But I think for now, I'm going to leave that on the tick. There are animated backgrounds as well, so you can have them so they move. So you've got the clouds moving behind, or you might have those funny looking shapes. It sometimes sends people's eyes a little bit skew-if, but it additionally lifts it and makes it a bit more interactive. I think because that's got a blue theme to it and there was some yellow in the badge of my school, I'm going to leave it there exactly as that. You've got on the top bar as well the 3 dots, and when you click the 3 dots, you can collaborate or duplicate. If you go to collaborate or duplicate, you can get a link in there, and if you copy that link and send it to a colleague in school, it will allow them to jointly author that form to create it. So it means you don't have to work in isolation. You can also give this form you've created as a template. You can gift it to somebody else in school, so it does reduce the work that other people might have to do, and then they can just adapt what they've got rather than having to start from scratch each time. If I go back to the dots again, in here in settings, there are a few really crucial settings that are useful to change. And those settings at the top there about who can respond. If you're going to send this outside of your school, need to change it to anyone can respond rather than anyone in your organization. You can also choose whether you want their name recorded or you want only one response per person, so you can limit the amount of times that people complete the form. I usually tick that because otherwise I end up with multiple entries and data that I need to take out when I get to the end of the analysis. So additionally, I'm going to say I want that for anyone because I'm going to have prospective governors that are parents here. And then that, once you click that, takes away those organizational choices. Down here then, accept responses. You can have a start opening date. So I may say I want this to open from tomorrow because I'm going to put this out in the newsletter as a link in my newsletter, and I want it to be live for a week and close on Friday the 25th. I think we'll have that exactly the same time, so it's open for exactly a week. You can also set duration times if you wish, and then you can shuffle the questions additionally for all the questions, not just the content in the questions. You can have a progress bar with certain conditions, and that's only available if you have more than one page. Because we've got a single page to this survey, that's not an option because you're on the one page, therefore you don't need to know how much progress you've made. You can have submit another response. So if you don't want people to be able to put another question in, because we're using this, anyone can respond, and we don't have the options we have for inside our organization, you might want to hide that if you just want people to submit this once. Unfortunately, you've got no way of stopping them opening the link again, but it does stop them from getting to the end of the form and doing it again. And you can have a customized thank you message that you can put in there to change it from the default of your response was submitted. So you might want to make that a lot more personal. You can get also the response receipts at the end. So you can have a receipt after submission, and then that receipt will get emailed to you so that you're notified that their form has been submitted and you can go and have a look at it. Or if you don't want to be bothered by that on an hourly basis, if there's a lot of reception that's going to be coming from this and people are going to submit a lot of forms, you may want to turn that off. And the email notifications are there as well. So I think that takes care of the options that are in there. There's no save button. They just get fixed when you put them in. You can additionally have languages. So if you've got EAL pupils, or maybe you've got parents from various nationalities, so it might be that we've got a whole raft of languages, and it also deals with script-based languages too. So it might be that I need Hindi, and I also am going to have a look. Let's see what else we've got in here. I might want Swedish because all of a sudden I've got a lot of Swedish families coming in. So that will allow this form to be displayed in other languages as well. The primary language that I'm using is English because I've prepared this in English, and maybe the demographic of the intake of my parents are English or my governors are English. You can print the format if you want to see it in paper form, but you lose a lot of the emphasis that you'll get from it being live and interactive. And then the other way that you've got in here is collect responses. And we've already got anyone can respond, but you're going to need to get this form shared. So this is the link to your form there when you want to collect responses. You could copy that, you could pop it on your website. You could shorten that URL if you want so that it's much shorter and snappier. And if you're going to have a visible URL, it's probably better to do that. You can email it directly to an individual person if you want to send it to one person. So you click on that and it will go to Outlook. You can have a QR code. So with forms that are maybe used for parents or governors and so forth, I've seen these successfully after you've got parents used to it, stick those inside the window of reception. So instead of someone coming to ask you for information or a form to fill in, they can simply scan that with their mobile phone from outside the window and it will pop up on their handset and they can fill the form in and submit it. You can download it so you can make it full size A4. If you want to pop this on your website or have this embedded in another newsletter, you can specify the height in pixels and the width in pixels, and then copy that. And if your website supports that element of code, it can then appear live inside your website. So there's a lot of ways that you can get information collected from these. Now I've made all those choices, I'm just going to preview it once more. Yeah, that's better. It's got the blue. It's got the 2 questions that I'm going to have in there. I've got my drop down box at the top to have it change between languages, and then off I go. So you've additionally got in here Immersive Reader. What Immersive Reader does, if you click Immersive Reader, it will take it out of the busy type of form, and it will then enable the accessibility tools, which we'll look at in a bit more depth when we come to one of the later training sessions in this series. But it gives you support for anyone to be able to access the form, and language doesn't become the barrier to accessing it. That's there. We've got a training session on Immersive Reader in a couple of weeks' time. So if you want to sign up for that, that's available on the Turn It On website. But we won't spend too much time going in that today because we're focusing on the forms. So now I've got that, I just want to use it. So that's where I would go to those collect the responses, and I would choose whichever way I'm going to get my link out of there. I've finished editing that form, and I'm going to come out of it. So I would click forms at the top. But if I wanted to see the responses, I click the response tab because we've been on the questions tab so far, and it tells me at the moment the status of that is closed because it's not going to go live until tomorrow at 4 o'clock. It will open up then. Got no responses, but it also tells me average time it's taken someone to respond. I'm going to jump back to the beginning, and then there is our governor's survey that we've been looking at. But we might want to have a look at the making a quiz with this instead. It's jumped back to the landing page and it's taken me to another tab. If I don't want to be on there, I can simply click close on that tab and it brings me back to here. If I'm not seeing what I've just created, don't fear, it just means your browser needs refreshing. So if you go to the top, refresh it, there's the governor's survey that I've just been making, and it's in there. Some people panic when they see that all of their hard work suddenly vanished or it hasn't appeared. It is there. You just need to refresh the forms site. If you're going to make a quiz, it's very similar. You go to new quiz, you give your quiz a title. So it might be artists. We're going to look at artists. And then we've got our question choices. So very similar, you choose a multiple choice question or whatever type you'd like. And then the other options in here are very similar. We will look at a fully fledged version of a quiz just to speed things up this afternoon, but the options across the top, the preview, the theme, the collect responses, and everything on the 3 dots is exactly the same as it would be on the other one. Now, artists are something I'm just going to jump out of by closing. If I did refresh again, artists will all of a sudden appear. But what I am going to do is I'm going to organize that a little bit. I want that to go in classroom quizzes, and then I can see it's in classroom quizzes. So when I come back to finishing off my classroom quizzes tomorrow, I'm going to go in there to pick it up. If I had a look at a quiz I've already made, so I might go into shapes. So this is a Key Stage 2 type quiz. It's telling the pupil and myself that I've created 3 questions and assigned a point per question. Some questions around shapes and properties of shapes, and I've already got a 1 there saying that there's 1 response. So in there it shows me what the summary is of the answers that I've received, but I could additionally see them individually as well, and we'll look at that when we go to see some responses on a question form, not a quiz form. I promised I would show you branching. So if I click into here, one of the things that you can do on a form is that on a quiz, sorry, is that you can decide what the pupils get when they are looking at it in the way of information. That also reduces the burden upon you in class and frees you up to maybe have group interventions or work with a specific pupil. There's a lot of benefits to doing it, so that you need to indicate what the correct question is. And we've done that by ticking here. That's the correct question because it is a triangle, and we've put crosses there. So when it comes to auto mark, it automatically knows from me what the correct answer is. If I then get an incorrect answer and it's circle, not right this time, check our lesson for revision, I've realized that that is not appearing for the square incorrect answer. I can toggle that on and I can put that in additionally for there as well. So if they get either of the incorrect answers, they're going to go back to the OneNote class notebook pages I'd made during our teaching. and they can read in there about the properties of shapes, vertices, and so forth. Then if I want this to branch, I can go to add branching. So depending on whether they got the question correct or incorrect here, it will take them on a different path. So if I go into add branching, what I can say is if they've answered triangle, which is correct, I want them to go to the end of the form because they don't need to answer question two. Question two was a check of if they got it incorrect, could they pick out other correct information? And if they are getting it incorrect, they're going to go to the next question. But equally, if I had more questions here and I had a 3 and a 4, I could go ahead and change that in. So what I think I'll do is I'll go down to here and I'm going to insert a new question. And that new question would be a description question. And it might be, what are the properties of a hexagon? And that's pretty simple, but I might want to have a visual prompt in there as well. So I'm going to go into images and I'm going to search for hexagon and see what that brings me up. Okay, we've got a hexagon there. That'll do very nicely. So that's now a question in there. I want this to be long answer because I don't want it to be too short. I'm going to say that this is a 2-point because it's a descriptive question. So there's 2 points available for that as opposed to being 1 point available for a multiple choice. So now if I go back to my branching from question 1, what I'm going to say is if they got that, I'm not end of form, I want them to go to question 2, what the properties are. But if they got that one incorrect here, I want them to either go to the end of the form and instead of next, that's going to be end of the form. But if not, they're going to drop down to there. So that when it runs and we go to preview, it would give me a path through, but it makes me complete the first question only. So if I said triangle, it then opens up question 2 for me. But if I said circle and I change the other option, it would go to the end of the form or a completely different question. So it takes a little bit of time to build it, but you can have a branched pathway, which is one of the more advanced features to take you through. Just like the immersive reader was available for the whole form, you might get a particular question which is text heavy or you don't understand and you want it read to you. But as a pupil, I can click immersive reader and it will take me into the text for that question. It will help to read out the questions and the possible answers to me so that it makes it more accessible in my classroom. As I'm just previewing as that teacher, I'm going to jump out. And now I've made those changes, I can just close that and I can come back over to where we've got our forms. It's not showing that I've made those changes, so I'm going to refresh it and there we go. So I might have a demo questionnaire, which I've got here, where there's 6 responses. To show you in a little more detail next, I'll show you what it looks like when you've got data in, but I'm just going to pop back over and check if there's any questions in there. There's none yet. But feel free to pop them in there if you want. To show me that I've got branching in this questionnaire, not quiz, I get the branching icon at the top, and then that allows me to see just exactly that I'm going to have to deal with some branching in here. If someone comes to quiz me about it, no pun intended, I'll know that if they've got a different route to the other person, that it's probably because of the way that they answered a particular question. If I come into the responses, I can see here I've had 6 responses. I get a very graphical view of the mean of everything that's been put in so far. So I can see samples of wordings, I can see bar graphs, I've got pie charts that give me an example, and I hover over them. It's got a legend that refers to the legends over here. But if I want to drill down and get a bit more information within forms, I can press view results. And then here I can see an individual submission. So I can click through, that was respondent 1, respondent 2, they appear to be all me, but I can see how long it took them to complete the form and what their individual answers were compared to if I come back out and I view the results, go back out there, I can see the mean or the summary here instead. So you've got 2 ways of viewing it. If you want to then manipulate that data, there's a button here that will take out all of that information. Across the top of the spreadsheet. Across the columns will be each of the questions, and down the rows will be each of the respondents. And then you can analyze that data further, whichever way you like, make it graphical with charts, crunch it, input it into other systems, whichever way you'd like to go about doing that. We also said at the beginning of the training, I would show you an example of question types. So what I've got here is a pre-built questionnaire with all those different question types in there. So I'm just going to preview it for you so you can see what it looks like. So here we go then. We've got a progress bar at the bottom. So this is page 1 of 2. So it can show me exactly how long I'm going to be taking to fill it in. And I've got a choice question. So am I a morning or an afternoon person? I think I'm a morning person. Because I've chosen morning, I've now got branching, which takes me to a different question too. So in text, please explain why you prefer learning. I wake up early and like to get started. And then here I've got a short text question. So prefer why you say why you prefer to explain. And it's me. I don't. I like mornings. And it can be as big or as small as you want. How did you find something? So this might be how do you find your learning afternoon or morning? Well, because it's morning, I'm going to put 4 stars. It might be a particular date that I want to start these early morning learning sessions. I'm going to choose Monday. That could also be used for people choosing a parents' evening. It could be, say, what date would you like a school trip to be organised, and you survey parents. You might want to rank something. So here I've got to say in order which way I prefer my subjects. I think I will take science and I'll bump that up to the top. And I'm going to move maths up to second. I'm going to put English at the bottom. It could be that I've got a rating type question. So here I've got different areas of science, and I might be rating myself by progress. So I'm emerging or expected progress, or I'm mastering it. Well, I feel like for my self-assessment, I'm mastering biology, I'm expected in chemistry, and I'm expected in physics. It could be that I want to use this for a pastoral reason or mental well-being. So I might want to ask, how likely am I going to try doing something today? And then that's where I can rate something here. So it might be, how likely am I going to attempt trying something different today? Well, not likely at all, or extremely likely. I feel because it's morning, 9, I'm up for it. You can additionally use forms for getting information in. So if you were collecting a piece of information you need is evidence from a parent, or for instance, you could get them to upload that file, and you can set the size limit and the types here. So I've made it Word, Excel, PowerPoint, PDFs, images, even audio and video. So I'm not going to upload anything. If it did, it would go to my OneDrive and I can pick it up from there. And then section 2, it might be ideas for future development. And oh dear, my section 2 is woefully underdeveloped and haven't got a question in there. So I'm simply going to submit the form. I get a thanks, your form was submitted, so I should personalize that. And then in this instance, I'm going to go back in, and my responses have now increased from 7 for 6 to 7, and it's also changed the data that I have in here as well. If I want to get back to the beginning again, I can either click on there or close that one down and go back across to there. I've got my math survey and everything where it was, but my recent survey is not showing. Again, it's because my browser hasn't refreshed yet, but when I refresh it, it will then come up with the surveys that I've been doing, and there is my demo. There's lots of different ways of building those quizzes. So it might be here I've got a parental device survey, and I want to know what sort of devices are being used at home. So I want to introduce more hybrid learning between home and school, but really before I do that, I need to know just what they're making use of in the way of the technology the school provides, but also what they've got at home so that a child could engage with the learning we're setting. Or it might be that I am going to have a question about cells, and in here this might be more secondary orientated, but we're looking at the differences between plant and animal cells, and that they have to tick the bits that are there between different types of cells, and they click the sections that are available in both plants and animal cells. But as a teacher, I've realized that only allows them one choice. So what I'm going to have to do is go in here and say I'm going to allow multiple answers instead, because they're going to need to tick more than one answer. And again, when I've finished, I close the cross to get out of it. And then my forms are back in here. So there's lots of different possible ways you may use forms. And after you've been using them for a while, I guarantee you'll start to use collections, so that you can then have your forms organized in those collection groups. And to navigate backwards and forwards, you can just then click My Forms and it will take you back to here. This is more of a useful site to work out of rather than the initial landing page, because you don't get all of the options and you don't get collections from there as well. The same as on the front landing page, you can have this as a list if you're tight for space, but most people feedback to me that they like the thumbnail preview because they can see the graphic and they can also see a little bit of what the form is about. So that is Microsoft Forms in a nutshell. Very accessible, very open, and very much useful to just about anybody in the school, because it will meld and adapt itself to whichever context you need. So at this point, I'm going to throw it open to any questions or any experiences you've had of forms. If there's anything you'd like to know a little bit more detail, or you'd like me to revisit, you can pop it back in there. While you're having a think about that, I'm going to jump back over to the presentation. And what we're going to do is just share the code with you that we said we would give to you today as part of the training, so that you can redeem that in Microsoft Learn. So we're just swapping that screen over now. So the code that you can redeem is there in the middle of the screen. If you're watching this as a recording, don't worry, that code will remain live indefinitely, so you can pass it on to colleagues, or even if you're watching this a year later, you can redeem it. How you redeem it is here on this slide. Once you've gone to Microsoft Learn, the link is in the chat from earlier, you will then need to sign in, and you can see my version there. If you go to your own achievements by clicking your name and going to achievement codes, in the middle where I've put the yellow circle, there's a blue hyperlink that says redeem your code now. When you click that, a little window will pop up in the right hand screenshot on this slide, and that screenshot is where you enter the code in the top right hand corner of the slide I've currently got displayed in front of you. And then that will give you the experience points for joining today's training, and it will also help you along your pathway with what you're doing of your own professional development as well. Just going to go back and check if there's any questions that have appeared in the chat. There isn't. I'm also going to end the recording at this point as well. So are there